Hi, welcome to The Outlet with Mac and Drew. I'm Mac.
I'm Drew. And today we are talking about Phish, one of Mac and me's favorite bands. It's funny, Mac and Me is actually an old movie. Have you seen Mac and Me?
I haven't.
Yeah, that's okay.
I've
I
checked
didn't
that out.
realize that till just now, but here we are, Mac and Me. That's an old movie. Anyway, Phish holds a special place in our hearts. Why it's the first video. It's kind of a band that's been shunned by the mainstream music scene, and gained a lot of their popularity just through their own willpower and booking their own live shows and doing everything grassroots and not really relying on a mainstream construct or some overlord to help them um, popularize their music. It's intriguing, underrated, mysterious band. That's still one of my favorite bands to this day. And they've kind of helped revive ever since. They're not any. They would claim that they're nothing like the Grateful Dead, but I would argue that they've kind of helped rekindle the spirit of the live, free-form jam music scene. Anyway, they hold a special place in both of our hearts, so we'll let Max start it off. We're going to start it off. What got you into Phish? How did you start? How did you hear about him? Why did you first start listening to him? How did it start?
So I must have been about 10 years old, and my uncle gave my dad one of the first CDs he made himself. You know, this is like the first time you could burn your own CD, and it had a Phish song on it. It was Bouncing Around the Room from a live one. You know, incredible recordings. I heard that, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool stuff. What is this? So how do you find out about them?
I don't remember exactly what I heard or how exactly I found out about them, but I remember connecting somehow. After I had listened to them for a while, I knew that there were awesome guitar solos in the music, because that was when I was learning how to play guitar, and I was hearing stuff in there that was like nothing I'd ever heard. And then I listened to, I heard You Enjoy Myself, that particular song by Phish, and that kind of just set it off for me. That kind of set the tempo, or set the tone, I guess, for, or kind of developed the lens through which I saw the rest of all their music, which made it way different. So they have little gems like that kind of rekindle your interest. Even after, I've been listening to them for probably over 10 years, and even after 10 years, you listen to a song that you might have heard 100 times, and you hear one little part that you might interpret differently now since you've been listening to. They have over 500 original songs. You're bound to still find some content somewhere in there over time. So it's just been a constantly developing, like, flowering interest in their music.
Yeah, once you get into them, it really blossoms from there, because they're so diverse and there's so much different music, and there's so much live music to listen to. You know, different from, you have to listen to like every freaking concert once you get into them, because everything's so different energy. They play songs differently every night. But yeah, right. I think that's definitely something that drew both of us to them. It's just how much diversity they had. You weren't just listening to the same album over and over again. You rarely even listened to their studio stuff, you know.
So did you start listening to Phish? Did you start listening to their studio albums?
No, but so I'd heard that, Bouncing Around the Room when I was a little kid, and listened to that for quite a while with my dad. But then it wasn't until I was a freshman in high school that my friends and I kind of started listening to them. Someone mentioned them, and I was like, oh, I've heard of them. Had to grab some of their albums and started listening to I think we started listening to their live stuff, actually. And that was really what led us to, like, whoa, this is something different.
Right.
They're making stuff up on the spot.
For
10 plus minutes.
Exactly. I didn't start listening. I only listened to live Phish for the first 5 or 6 years I listened to Phish. Yeah. I didn't start out with studio albums. Like, the first Phish album I had was an actual physical live recording that I bought at the little music store in Oklahoma City next to this place called the Conservatory, where when we were young kids, we'd go see all of our, hard rock concerts where people smoked cigarettes. It was the hit place to be.
Yeah, I
And
remember walking
I got
through
that
and
first little recording, and that's I listened to it, probably 100 times in a row.
wow. um,
So
so so that's what drew us to them. But why do you think so many other people have been drawn to them? Because it seems like every Phish fan has a different story.
I mean, there's a lot of things to like about Phish. I don't think there's very much to. If you're finding things to hate about Phish, you're not really digging very deep into what they really are, what they represent.
Yeah,
So that's fine. I don't really care if people say they hate Phish, but um, yeah, I mean, there's so much to like. They're all. I think it's one of the best. They have the best chemistry of one of any bands I've ever seen, and I'm
definitely.
not really talking about like musicianship, even though they're all incredible musicians, and it's really hard to compare musicians. But I would say that group has a chemistry that's really hard to be rivaled, even by classical musicians or even jazz musicians that are playing really avant-garde, outside the box stuff. Because if you really delve into some of their live albums, you hear them go way outside and really kind of lose control. But in the bigger picture, they lose
And they
control in a controlled way and come back
and they bring it back all at the same
and then
time.
bring it
It's
back. Yeah.
incredible precision for being so out there on some of these improv sections. Um,
Yes.
that's not easy to do. That takes a long, long time. A lot of takes
And,
like you're saying, takes a special chemistry, not just practicing together.
Yeah, I think it does. That's one thing. If I had to put it into one word, I'd say the chemistry between the bandmates is what attracts all the people. It attracts the people who like good music, and it attracts the party going scene too. The people that like
Yeah,
the show
you can't
goers who
talk
like to.
about Phish without talking about the party scene, live shows, because that's
It's
hugely important
their
to the
their
movement.
following is that spectacle is something worth seeing. It's just as
Yeah, even if you don't like them, it's worth just
yeah.
witnessing. Go to a Phish parking lot,
I
buy
had
some
no
tissues.
idea what that scene was like the first show I saw.
Yeah, it
It
was
was just as
something.
good as the show. Just being, I mean, it was a fun time.
Yeah, everybody there is, for the most part, is very positive and happy, and wants to share things with you. Definitely a incredible sense of community when you're hanging out for a Phish show.
Definitely.
So yeah, and that can be, the party thing can get a little too out there sometimes. Some people are just there to do drugs, but for the most part, I think people are there to experience the scene and the music and are there for good reasons, good positive reasons.
And I will say, I've been to two Fish shows, and I went to one in St. Louis for my first show, and then the next night they played was here in Oklahoma City. So we went to St. Louis and then drove all day to see the next show, and we saw the same crowd at both shows. Like the same crowd was following him for every show. And you're right, like there is a group that just wants to go to get jacked up, and have a time that they can barely remember, but there's people like that at every show.
Yeah, no matter
But
what.
one thing to
There's
note,
people like that at every bar.
yeah, and one thing to note is that at those Fish shows, the people that are there with that mission are still not causing trouble. Like
Yeah,
I would say, we went to me and my roommate went to a Slipknot concert not too long ago,
sounds
and
dangerous.
I mean there are people like fighting and screaming, and like it's a totally different live experience. It's not the same at all. I think the positive vibes that come from the band and what the music is about resonates through the music and into the audience, and the audience kind of helps bolster that and feeds it back to the
Definitely.
band. It's kind of like a feedback. They talk about that in their Bittersweet Motel documentary, that it's kind of like a feedback system.
Yeah, and that often doesn't come into play if a band is just playing their standard songs the same way every night. But in Fish's case, when they're playing the song differently every time and they have these long improv sections, they really do feed off the crowd and how people are. If you can
Mm-hmm.
tell that when people start getting disinterested and talking and they stop dancing. You can watch the musicians notice that and they'll pick it back up. They'll change something. Sometimes they purposely give you a break. They
I
purposely bring it down so you can go to the bathroom or something. But then they'll, a few minutes later, it's all of a sudden everybody's dancing again. Pretty cool to watch, just to watch and observe the crowd, how the band and the crowd interact is something
yes.
I find really fascinating. It shows watching all the movement in the crowd. It's almost like waves through the crowd, how the crowd
Yes.
moves.
And I will say the one thing I saw live, and actually I saw this live, but I saw it on DVDs of their live shows first. One thing that really turned me on to Phish was the one like little acapella song that they would do at the end of their sets, because it just
Is that the vocal
communicated that
jam
that whole. What'd you say?
is that the vocal jam, or was this an
Okay,
actual
so
song?
they do a vocal jam, but they also sing like old timey a cappella
Yeah, yeah.
standards, like "Sweet Adeline," or and there's a couple more
Or
I
like
can't
a
remember off the top of my head.
barbershop. Is that what it's called? Like a barbershop
Yeah, like a barbershop
trio or
quartet, like
something
yeah,
like
do the
that.
a cappella.
Yeah,
But it
it's
just
funny.
shows that they're they're so interested in the way the music sounds themselves. They're obviously all getting off on how their music sounds
Yeah,
just as
they're having
much
fun.
as the
They're
audience
being
is.
weird. That's them. They are weird. They're interesting people, expressive
Yes.
people.
But that a whole acapella barbershop thing just shows that they can express intense, uh, positive energy through musical ideas, regardless of their instrument or their medium. They'll do that through their voices, or like there's times where Trey, the guitar player, will do a loop and loop what he's playing. Turn the guitar volume down, throw it behind his back, and get on percussion that he has set up right next to him, and they'll all do something totally different, and make it sound
Or they'll
different.
all
So
switch instruments. That's pretty funny too. And
yeah, they're all switching instruments. So
play a
because
vacuum cleaner.
that's one hard thing about being in a 3 or 4 person band like that is you only have 4 instruments. You're limited to what you can do. You need to have a lot of tones, a lot of
A
different
lot of effects.
sounds,
Yeah.
a lot of different modes of playing, different intensities, and they are experts. That's one of the other cool things about them too, at raising and lowering the intensity of their
They're
music
very dynamic.
on a
Yes,
dot
that's
and
something.
communicate. Yeah,
That's
go
something that
ahead.
they have in common with the Grateful Dead. Extremely dynamic music,
Mm-hmm.
where they'll bring it way down, and then build it back up, and the whole concert just really is like a roller coaster ride.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, they'll do that with the volume. They'll raise and lower the volume in a very strategic, artful way. Or they might be playing a song and they decide to raise the intensity of the song at a certain part where they never have, and it's so obvious they never have. But you're watching them communicate with each other in real time on the stage, and all of a sudden it just happens because their chemistry is so good. They know they can
And they're
anticipate how they're all going to play.
they're
And
bold
you
too.
and
Yeah, they
you're
have to be.
watching the live shows, and you're watching them do it. You understand, like if you see a bunch of live shows and you see them play the same songs, you're starting to take the journey with the band, like the improv journey, and it makes
Yeah,
the shows that much sweeter when you watch them. Like, damn, I know exactly what they're doing right now, and I've never seen them do that before. It just makes each show like another little gem. Like they're all real special in their own right.
they're so bold to be able to do that because they really are taking way more risks than pretty much any other band out there. They'll
That's
have an audience of 20 to 30,000 people, and they're up there just they're winging it, and that takes some incredible skill.
exactly that's the key word is risk. I think they do take risk.
Yeah, and you can't go too far out there, but sometimes they'll really throw something. They'll really throw a curveball, a really hard curveball, and they can usually make it work. It's impressive to be able to make it work.
It is impressive. And we are extremely biased, of course, because we both already really like Phish. So somebody who doesn't listen to Phish watching this video probably would wonder what's going on. But it's also interesting to note that they have gained success and popularity in spite of all the mainstream music outlets.
Yeah, it's popular to hate them, and that's you got to ask why that is, because that is really confounding question. Most bands out there, even bands that a lot of people don't really like that have their own following, they don't have this extreme negativity towards them. You got to ask why is Phish, this band they're weird, but they're very positive, happy, you know, pretty like innocent. They don't fight or anything. They don't encourage violence. Why are they receiving such negativity?
Exactly.
Because you'll meet somebody and you'd say, oh, I like Phish, and they're like, oh, they're terrible. They're just awful. I hate them. why? Why would you? I understand if it's not your thing, but why do you hate them?
Exactly. And it's interesting to think too that a band might be like Phish might be shunned, like in those Rolling Stone articles, like in their documentary in Bittersweet Motel, like they're shunned kind
Yeah,
of by them. But these bands that promote a sort of satanic or occultic message are given a free pass, and not only given a
oh
free
yeah,
pass but promoted.
yeah.
So
If
it's
you
kind
talk
of
about
interesting
beating
to
women in your
notice that.
lyrics and stuff, you often make it to the top, and it's really sad to see. There's a lot of negativity in a lot of pop music today.
I think that Fish's success though is just, I mean, look no further than their goals or their motives. They've even said themselves, the more we put into it, the more we get out of it. So the more we put into it, the harder they're going to get off on the stage when they nail some improvised thing they're playing together they've never played before. And they know that if they get off like that, then the audience is going to get off. And it's this giant feedback loop. It's not
Yeah, for
about
sure.
record sales or what kind of shirt they're wearing in some picture for some article that means nothing. It's about the experience. It's like, let's stop talking about it. It's like, what are we going to do? What's the band going to do about it? It's like, it's all about the show.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, and it
There,
seems
there are a lot of bands like that where it's about the show.
yeah, yeah. I think they really do have a deep connection to their audience, and they really try to work with their audience for their audience. They're not just up there saying, "Look at me, look how cool I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the center of the show." They try to put themselves into the whole thing and try not to just be the what do you call it? Just like the leaders like that. They're trying to just join the crowd basically. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting, like less ego, I guess is what I'm kind of trying to say.
Yeah.
They're not playing with a tremendous ego when they're able to do things like they do in their live
That's
shows.
that's yeah, that's evident in their lack of movement on stage.
Yeah, yeah,
It's about the music, it's about the ideas they're communicating. I mean, those guys don't. I mean, they jump around a little bit, but they had some songs where they even take that to the next level, where they jump on the
yeah.
trampolines.
Oh, it's hilarious.
They do the coordinated dance while they're playing. Like
And
that's
during most of their improv sections, they take the lights off themselves and they kind of just blend in. You're often not able to see them that well. It becomes about the whole light show around them and the interaction with the crowd, especially in the improv sections.
yeah. When was the last live Fish show you saw?
A couple years ago at Dick's Sporting Goods Park in Denver, went to a few there.
I would say the one I saw in St. Louis. I think it was in 2012. I've only seen two Phish shows, but of the two, that was much better than the Oklahoma City show. But the one thing I noticed from that show more than anything was the tone. The tone of everything at the show was so good.
Yeah, sometimes that just happens.
I couldn't, and it was not in a place where they had good acoustics or anything.
Hmm.
There have been a lot of times where I've seen bands and be like, it's a shame that the acoustics weren't better in this room because I could hear them. Okay, I might hear them better. I've thought that many times.
Yeah,
This is one of the first shows I've been to where the tone was so good. Like it resonated everything. You could hear every instrument perfectly. It resonated with your whole body. It was loud. I never realized how loud Trey's guitar was until I went to a live show. That's why I can hear it so well on all these live recordings.
he's so
Because
expressive with his tones, the way he bends the strings and what he gets out of his equipment. Extremely expressive guitarist. One of the
he
most
is.
expressive ever.
He's I got really into him for a long time when I was learning how to play guitar, and once I got one of those little compressor pedals, I finally figured out kind of the secret to that tone, having a compressor.
Yeah, and almost
And then
every
all those
guitarist
little
uses one
secrets are
now.
unlocked. Huh?
Almost every guitarist uses a compressor now, don't they?
I would say it's about half and half.
Half
It
and
depends
half,
on your
really.
style. I don't use it as much anymore. I found that it kind of destroys your natural tone.
Yeah, definitely. That's the idea. Is you're actually literally compressing the sound.
Exactly. You actually have less real dynamic control as far as volume, but the pick attack and stuff, that still comes through with the compressor. But the reason why Trey's tone is so unique is because he has one of those really old Ross compressors,
Oh
which they
yeah,
don't
yeah.
make anymore, which you can't get anymore. But he uses just those regular old TS9 tube screamers, just like you have. He
Yeah,
has
a lot of
two of
his
those.
pedal board is like ancient. He's just kept the same
Mhm.
pedals his whole career.
He does have old pedals, but he still has. Yeah, I guess compared to most of the pedal stuff now, it is kind of ancient, but they know their gear. That's another one of the things they talk about. I've seen Trey talk about and Mike talk about in their gear videos. Is just use what works. So they might have really
Yeah.
old gear. They're not using the
You
most
don't want to
top
just be
line
fiddling
stuff.
with your gear every night because you're never gonna find that perfect tone. You know, eventually you have to give up and be happy with what you got and work with it.
Exactly, exactly, and that I went through that too. Where I tried to get that. Oh, I wanted to get that Trey tone so bad. I wanted to sound just like it because it was so cool
Yeah, but
to
then
listen
eventually you're
to.
like, okay, now I want to sound like me. I want to be my own
Exactly.
unique musician.
Or you think along the lines of how do I get the most expressive tone? How do I exploit my instrument and what I have the most?
Yeah, and like your own playing abilities, your own style, and that
Yes.
becomes
And then
totally
it sounds like something
composition.
different, but
Yeah, and you could say that's what Trey did. He came up with his own extremely unique tone and playing style, like nobody before him.
I would agree. But at the same time, that was what got me into Phish was Trey. But as time has gone on, I've grown to appreciate the other guys in the band just as much.
John Fishman is my favorite drummer of all time.
Oh yeah, he's insane. He's great. And Mike Gordon, his style complements Trey's guitar playing so well,
Oh
and they're
yeah,
both equally weird and equally willing to explore. So it all fits really well. And Page is he's the most reserved, I'd say,
yeah.
of
Usually
anyone.
he's kind of
He's
he
the
some
spine.
yeah. He has to. I feel like often it's like Trey's kind of playing over top. Everybody's kind of setting Trey up, and
Yes.
often it's kind of Fishman and Trey you can kind of really pick out easily if you're not particularly listening to Mike
Mhm.
and Page.
I would agree.
But Fishman's kind of drumming style, he's kind of subtle compared to a lot of rock drummers. If
Oh
you
yeah, he
can't,
is. He employs those snare roll tactics where he's like
yeah,
always got his snare
he's
going.
always doing something weird and interesting. If you listen for it, he's never playing like a different normal rock drummer. There's always something weird about the beat he's playing.
I think
He's
that's one
throwing
of the
all sorts of
reasons
interesting
that
things in.
the Phish stuff is so catchy and when it really starts to click and catch on, is that a lot of times they imply the rhythm, like
Yeah,
with a lot of the Fishman drum beats, he might be doing triplets in four, or he might be playing groups of four in triplets, but playing in the same time to accentuate this rhythm that you're kind of hearing, but you're not really hearing because it's not what he's playing. But Trey does the same thing where he'll accentuate notes in more of a geometric pattern than a musical pattern.
yeah,
So it cycles around and you're hearing maybe three against four, four against three. And it
yeah,
creates a really cool feel. And you can play something really simple with that idea and it just sounds really full.
yeah. Definitely. I think you really hit the nail on the head there with how Trey does that, and like kind of on the surface, he sounds like he's playing these simple melodies, but they're not quite as simple as you think. Plus, he's often coming up with them on the spot in an improv section. And
Mm-hmm.
that is something pretty unique. I feel like that's kind of, in my opinion, Jerry and Trey don't really sound like each other at all
No,
tonally,
not
but
at
I
all.
think they were both incredible at being able to come up with melodies in improv sections. Beautiful melodies over and over again on the spot. I think that's something that a similarity I see from Phish and Grateful Dead.
Yes, their approach is the same, but the outcome is totally different,
Totally
I think.
different, yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Well, why don't we break down some songs?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, give us a few of your most notable Phish songs and tell us a little bit about them.
Well, I'd say the most notable Fish song to me is "You Enjoy Myself."
I would agree with that.
If I had to pick one out of all of them that exploited the freeform jam aspect of Fish, their ability to construct jams, um, singing in harmony, writing weird lyrics, having extended periods of orchestration.
It's very very progressive, like a
Yes,
symphonic.
very progressive, extreme dynamic differences throughout the whole song.
Oh yeah,
Weird cadence, time signature changes. Um, and it's one of those songs, too, where if you listen to it live, it's different every time. The song is so jam packed with notes, especially for every instrument, that they fail at it a lot of times in very minor ways. Like
yes.
trying to mess up a guitar
It's
part
such a
or
difficult song.
So it's different. It takes on a life of its own. When you have somebody playing something like that live, and they mess up, or if they start out and they nail it, it has one feel. But if they start the song out and they kind of fumble and have to regain their momentum, it creates a totally different feel the rest of the song. So, and the song is so long. I don't know how it's. What is it, like 19 minutes or 20 minutes, something like that?
The live versions usually are, yeah, because they'll
Yeah.
end it. They'll end it with the vocal jam usually.
Yes. So the whole exactly, and sometimes they do that, and sometimes they don't, and that just it makes it's not so much a song as it is like a big musical experience. It's different every time.
It's so wild. When they start, when they hit the first couple notes, the crowd goes nuts because they know they're in for a 20+ minute journey through all sorts of different musical stylings, different
and it's
dynamics.
so recognizable. That first little arpeggiated little run that they do.
It's such incredible playing in that song, especially from I assume Trey wrote that song, but that's incredible guitar work, really unique.
It is unique. And just as incredible as the guitar work are the chord changes and the ideas that are transmitted in that song.
Definitely.
Phish has this tendency to, or I think this is Trey's tendency actually, because this is his style. But they tend to write stuff that sounds like lullabies. The melodies tend to sound like lullabies.
Yeah.
So you have that kind of classical. And you identify with the music because it sounds like almost like sleepy time, relaxing, cool chord changes. But they'll go from something like that, a lullaby type sound, to just totally insane, chaotic, feeling of unrest, and then result
tension. Incredible tension they put in there.
Yeah, tension there.
Tension fundamental of Western any kind of music, and it kind of crescendos in that kind of James Brown like section. You kind of peak there, and then it just gets real weird after that, and you don't know where it's going. Get into the improv section.
Yeah, imagine
experience live.
Imagine playing "You Enjoy Myself" like the studio version for somebody who's never heard Phish before, and then asking that person to guess what genre of music that band plays.
Yeah, and you're like, oh man, I don't know. They're just weird.
I don't know. So, what do you think? What's another song that sticks out to you? I know I kind of chose a low hanging fruit, but
yeah, you kind of chose the epic one there. I really resonate with the song "Cavern" from A Picture of Nectar. For some reason, that whole album just kind of defines Phish for me. It's so weird, and they throw in so many different styles. Some of the styles just uniquely sound like them. They threw in, they have a lot of Latin feel in a lot of the album. And also, some of the songs are more like they're written in the kind of standard pop style with the standard choruses, verses and choruses. But with Cavern really isn't written that way, and it's I find it just implies this real weirdness only associated with Phish, and in which it ends with them telling you to take care of your shoes. and ends. It's like as confusing as it is beautiful and
Right.
weird. The lyrics are, you know, I think it for me it brings a lot of strong emotions in the lyrics, and just
Mhm.
puts these crazy pictures in my mind. Um,
Yeah, Cavern is a really that song has heavy imagery. With
yes,
not even
very
just
heavy
with the not
imagery.
even just with the lyrics, but the music
The music
itself
itself,
has heavy, like dark imagery.
yeah, gotta think they were on psychedelics when they wrote that song because it's just so strange. To me, it inspires tons of creativity with like the visions you were talking about. Just it is a very visionary song, and
Yes.
I think that's something most songs invoke some emotions, kind of maybe make you feel good or something. But that one I find invokes something way more than a normal song I like. And I think
Yeah.
that's why I picked it
I think that's
to
a good
discuss.
point to a bigger point to make too is the visionary aspect to the music. I think that's what
Yeah,
draws a lot of people to it, and I think that when you get into that party scene and you know or take some hallucinogens or if you smoke pot or drink a bunch of beer or whatever, if you change your state of mind and you listen to these visionary type art forms, then you're going to connect to it even more. So it makes you think that okay, it must make sense that Phish, as collectively, they're doing that intentionally.
yeah.
So, and
It's
they
like
obviously have a history too with experimenting with drugs and psychedelics and stuff like that. That's evident in the music too. But
yeah, for sure.
um, it almost is almost like a catalog of somebody's journey through experimenting with psychedelics. Some of those songs, I think Cavern is kind of one of those songs.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess they wrote a picture of Nectar. That was when they were playing at Nectar's, right? That little
Right.
tiny weird creative place. Was that somewhere in the north, like Vermont or
Uh
Maine or
huh.
something? I don't remember where it is. Never been there. Like to go sometime. But yeah, you have another song you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, actually, what song that connects to that that's real similar in style and imagery, I guess, is Maze
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
to Cavern. It has a lot of the
it does
same
have a lot of imagery in that song too.
similar ideas. Isn't Maze tends up being a really long song,
Definitely. It
and
has a
it's extremely rhythmic. Some parts are somewhat atonal. It kind of reminds me sometimes of a Primus song because they use a lot
yeah,
of that tritone idea behind music, the flat fifth idea behind music. So it sounds kind of atonal. There's not a lot. There's kind of some strange harmony, um, and the time signature is pretty much non-existent. It's a very feel-based song where if you were to actually map it out, the time signature would change so many times you would lose the grand idea of the whole
yeah.
song.
That's
I think.
something that Fish seems to be able to do that most bands can't. Is they can keep this whole song structure together. Yet sometimes, like you're saying, sometimes there's not really a definable rhythm, or a lot of times in their improv sections, there's not really a definable chord progression.
Mm-hmm.
They're able to they're able to pull off songs like that, and it's definitely something
It's
unique.
it's something I noticed when I first started listening to them, but I didn't realize how difficult it was to do that in a live setting until I tried it myself with a band.
Yeah,
And then you realize like everybody has to be like communicating with each other in real time, uh, like not out in the open, however you say it, covertly communicating with each other in real time while you're playing.
yeah.
To think about the logistics behind that is crazy. There's all kinds of signals,
That's
and
some
just knowing how they play. So
that's something that Bob Weir, the Grateful Dead, talked about. And in his opinion, it seemed to be that it was from doing so much LSD together in the '60s, and like Kim Casey's acid test, that they had this ability to communicate with each other, you
mm,
know, almost subconsciously, or at least without even looking at each other. Maybe not really I don't think he describes it as telepathically, but it seems to be it really resonates in their music and in these improv sections. It seemed like Fish developed a similar characteristic where they were, without even looking at each other, they were able to just know where everybody was going at the same time.
right, yeah, I would. That type of experience having that experience with other people is like going through it's like going through a traumatic experience almost when you have a big group psychedelic experience like that. There is kind of a bond. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
I would agree with that. And yeah, if you all experience kind of the same thing, and the intent is all your intents are aligned. I think that there can be some positive experiences that come out of doing that, as far as like developing chemistry with other bandmates. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that Phish has done. I don't know if they have done this. I would be willing to bet that they have because they're so deep into pushing boundaries and experimenting and trying these things, and they're no stranger to substances whatsoever.
Yeah.
But that's obvious. But um, yeah, I think that's a good point to make about the Grateful Dead too. I would say that a lot of bands have probably done that exact same thing in order to find a connection with each other. I mean,
Yeah.
equating it to
It's something
the
that the
very
Beatles
mild
went through.
bass line. Sorry, go ahead.
It's something that the Beatles went through, and a bunch of those other bands
Exactly.
in the 60s.
I mean, imagine the low bass line, primal camaraderie you feel with your buddies when you go out and just drink beer.
Yeah, and
And
it's even more intense with psychedelics.
imagine doing that with the intent of creating a chemistry with the more intense substances that lasted longer with your instruments in hand with a common goal.
Yeah.
So anyway, um, so yeah, Maze. I don't know how we got into that topic from the song Maze, but that's where we went. Um, but yeah, I wrote Maze and Reba down right next to each other as similar songs. I guess Reba isn't so much similar to Cavern as far as the tone of the song goes, but I'd say Maze and Reba are kind of similar in that Reba is another one of those songs like You Enjoy Myself too, where there is a heavily constructed, super dynamic um, written part that never deviates when they play it live, ever.
Yeah.
And then there is a secondary part of the song that sounds like a different song that has a construction that's totally different, different feel, different mode. And then within that construct are certain little chunks where they take artistic license when they play live. And they might play a little diddly different here and a little diddly different there, but for the most part, it's the same. And they communicate this, similar ideas. And sometimes they'll go way off the deep end, and sometimes not. But it's another one of these. I think a theme that runs through the band and all their songs is that they create songs that have a happy medium between construction and improvisation. It allows for both.
Yeah, yeah. And Reba just has such a it has such strange lyrics, and the way they sing them is very strange too. They're kind of like off tempo of each other, and then it goes into that just wild progressive jam, those wild runs. I don't even know if you can classify that into a mode. I don't know if you've tried, but yeah, that song always blows my mind when I listen to how they were somehow able. It's like they're playing off tempo or something they get done singing.
It is.
And they're
It's kind of bizarre. And I think one of the coolest things about Phish is they will go so outside and they'll do really weird chord changes, but it's so well thought out and really so simple when you break it all down. It's the reason why it works. I think it's real similar to the idea behind the way Jimi Hendrix made music too, because it's one of my favorite guitar players of all time. I mimic his style.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd say I mimic Jimi Hendrix and Trey more than any other guitar players. Those two. And Jimi Hendrix does a lot of similar things to Trey.
He's able to get so much expression out of such a simplistic tone. If you ask them to play somebody else's song, you immediately know it was them because they play such a unique style. They can make anything their own.
Yes, and they might input a lot of their creative identity into a riff, not in the musical part of it, but the rhythmic part of it. They might take a really simple progression. It's like Jimi Hendrix would do this all the time. He might take a really simple progression that was all these notes that was a little bit longer than a 4-bar measure, and then repeat all those notes in a different pattern to complete 3 out of 4 bars the next measure to make a full 8 bars. But it doesn't sound like it's in 4/4. They both kind of do that, and they both use similar voicings on the guitar too. That's the biggest, I think, the key to the Trey tone is what note you play where on the guitar. Some people will pick up the guitar and say, okay, I'm going to learn how to play this song Waste. Okay, so it's, a D and then a D7 and then a D diminished seven, and then there's a couple different chords. But if you don't learn how to play it exactly like Trey plays it,
doesn't sound right.
It's not gonna sound the same. It's because him and Jimi Hendrix do the same thing. They use the 3-chord voicing more than or three string voicing on the guitar more than anybody else, where they most heavily rely on the B string, the G string, and the D string as their harmonic element to the music. And if they want to add any fullness or anything, they'll add some bass note on the A string or the low E string.
Yeah.
Playing over with their thumb while they, use their first 3 fingers to maybe finger chord or bar chord, and then reach over with their thumb to hit a bass note.
That's how I think of Hendrix playing a lot. So he would often, he'd give his own playing a lot of dynamics by adding the low E to his thumb.
And they both play like they're piano players too.
Yeah, that's something like I guess like Wes Montgomery would often plays. He would he'd be high and low at the same time.
Yep, exactly. And throughout any of the songs, the most interesting thing for me to listen to, as far as the music goes, still, is hearing a section where they're all improvising, Trey especially. And I listen to Trey manipulate the music from a low register on the guitar to a high register on the guitar, and hear how he moves it, how he goes from the low notes to the high notes. Because he does that always in a really, or he uses his ear so well, and he exploits his ear talent more than most guitar players I've heard.
I would say that has similarities to Jerry Garcia as well, because he was able to do things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Those big, incredible runs that he would make up on the spot.
Yes.
I think that may be something that it's possible Trey actually got some of that from him. Obviously, he was an influence on Trey.
It wouldn't surprise me. It's funny in the doc. I keep coming back to it. I do, but that Bittersweet Motel documentary. Rolling Stone magazine compares Trey to Jerry Garcia or the Grateful Dead, and saying that I guess that Phish is now carrying the Grateful Dead torch in the live jam music scene. Right? Yeah, I see you rolling your eyes too. That's exactly.
I hate the comparisons, and I'm sure Phish hates the comparisons too.
And he expressed that same feeling too.
Yeah.
But I would say too, you can't help but think that they are taking that torch in some way. Whether they want to acknowledge it or not, they have been influenced by the Grateful Dead. They're carrying on that same, live music, jam, freeform, improv music scene. So,
for sure, I bet there's a lot of bands who Grateful Dead greatly influenced who you wouldn't even think of.
Exactly.
The radar influences. But I think that will do it for our show today. And in the future, I think we'll maybe take a closer look at some of the musical stylings of Phish, who their influences were, and maybe take a little closer look at some of their gear and how they get some of those tones.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe even provide some examples of how to play some of the songs.
Yeah, for sure. Andrew has covered a lot of Phish shows with his band. A lot of Phish songs, not shows.
I never get as much enjoyment out of playing guitar still this day as I do when I play some Phish lick, some Trey lick. They're so fun.
Yeah.
So
I bet Trey could tell stories about the same thing. They covers have been. We'll do covers too in the next show because the covers have been huge in Phish's live shows.
definitely.
Okay, well that will do it for now.
Till the next time.
Signing off.